Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. I'm working up here in my front yard veggie garden today because I need to get my sweet potato bed built. And I thought while we're up here, I'll show you what's happening mid-spring and see what there is to harvest. These are two potato beds that I've built earlier. This one I do have a video on showing what I did to create this bed, but all the potatoes are really starting to grow well now. I'm pretty happy with how it's all going. I put a good layer of compost down on the bed, but I've also been topping it up with fresh grass clippings from when I mow my backyard, and that's going to be retaining lots of moisture and give the potatoes a bit more space to grow in. This is the initial potato bed that I've built, and the grasses underneath are mostly controlled. They are popping up a bit through here, so I think I might just get another layer of cardboard, cover that all over, get some more wood chips down and just pile up a bit more compost, all the grass clippings, and see if we can get those grasses under control. Now the most recent bed that I've put in is just at the edge of the garden, and it's a continuation of my perennial bed. All I've done here is put the cardboard down and put a thick layer of the wood chips on top, and I've planted some strawberries here and also one artichoke, which I've just buried into some compost within the wood chip layer. I haven't dug through the cardboard in a hope to suppress all the grasses. Now I've left an edge of cardboard so it's easy to join more cardboard on for when I'm building this sweet potato bed, which I'm going to put along on contour just here. Bit hard to sort of see from this angle, but these beds are on contour, and the garden bed I'm building today will just follow along from this one here. I will have to chop down some of this vegetation just to get it a bit lower before I get started. I've got my cardboard at the ready and I'm hoping I've got enough because I want to build my garden right from that point up there to here, which lines up with the edge of my potato bed up the top there. I'm just going to clear any growth that's sort of big like this and some of those taller grasses and get that down so that the cardboard will lay a bit more flat. And I'm just going to do, hopefully, if I've got enough cardboard, up until kind of the next path so I can get in the garden bed and the path next to it. It's easy getting rid of these borage plants. Once we get the cardboard and the compost and the wood chips onto those, they shouldn't return. What is more challenging is this area has lots of this running grass, which seems to find its way through any weak spots in the cardboard and if you've got any gaps. So that will be probably an ongoing issue like you saw up in the normal potato bed. I've also got a few blackberries starting to appear in the garden up here, and I have been through this section and gotten out most of those plants, but I'll be digging this out as much as I can. I find there's lots of little baby blackberries coming up at this time of year. It seems to be the time that they like to grow, and it's mostly just because birds have dropped a lot of seeds in the garden. But I've got a fair bit of root. Doesn't mean it won't return there, but I'll just go and dispose of that and make sure that dies. I found a good method of disposal is just to leave that out on a clear surface where it just will dry out and die off. Now for the borage and any of the dandelion that are here, I'm just going to cut off at root level and leave all those roots in the soil. But I think with some of the running grasses, if I can get out a good bit of that root and sort of knock it back a bit, that's what I'm going to do. Not what I prefer to do with a no-dig method, but might help in the long run. These little flea beetles seem to love all the weeds that are around here, so I'm a little bit worried about getting rid of all of their preferred food in case they go and find some of my plants in the veggie garden. Up in my two potato beds, I didn't have to do this. This grass has really got out of control here and it didn't up in that area. So I'm going to have to put in a little bit more effort here to get this not eradicated, because I don't know if that's possible, but at least a little bit more controlled, so this area has got a chance to establish. I'm trying to do it with the least amount of soil disturbance, and a lot of the roots just pull out fairly easily because we've had so much rain lately. So that area is not too bad now. Where the running grasses aren't such a problem, I'm just going to cut it down so that I can get the cardboard kind of flat on this surface. Last time when I built my potato beds, I didn't cut down any of the grasses, and I did find a number of points the grass, where it sort of stuck up, it pushed through the damp cardboard. So I'm just going to get it down first and see if I can reduce that issue. Well, that's taken longer than I thought. It was all basically running grasses, so I thought I needed to put in a pretty good effort to get rid of that. Down this end, it's mostly clover and just forbs, but not so much of those grasses that just keep growing. Now, I've certainly done a lot of digging here to get rid of the grasses in this space. Now, the thinking behind that is it's going to be a sweet potato bed, so I'm going to have to be digging those tubers out anyway. Down the track, I hope to have enough compost, so there's a really good layer to grow both my potatoes and sweet potatoes, so that all I'm pulling them out of is the compost layer. But I'm not there yet. That's going to take quite a bit of work to get all that organic material on the soil surface. So for the moment, I'm going to accept that this is going to be a dig bed just because of the crop that I'm growing here. So I felt that it was worth putting in the time right now to get rid of those grasses, and hopefully they won't be such an issue ongoing. Now I'm just going to leave all these grasses separate for the moment until I get a really hot compost going, and then I should be able to add those because they'll decompose in that really well. Now to see how much garden I can create with the cardboard I've got. I'm just going to get it damp in this stock trough to start with. Okay, my cardboard's all wet. Now let's get it on the garden. Now, as expected, I really didn't have enough cardboard for the whole bed, and certainly not enough cardboard for the path next to it. And it's also not quite the length I want. But I'm really happy to have made a start. The hardest bit with all those grasses is done. I'm going to get my compost onto this section, and then I'll finish this another day. Well, there's a great start on my sweet potato bed. I will be topping up the wood chips on this path when I finish off the other path, once I've got some more cardboard. And I'm also going to be adding some of my homemade compost to the top of this, adding layers of grass clippings when I mow, and also some duck bedding, so that I can get a really thick compost layer, so that down the track I can just harvest potatoes out of all that organic material and leave the soil undisturbed. Okay, now that we've got that bed done, let's head into the garden. We'll have a look at what's growing and see what can be harvested in mid-spring. This garden bed here, I just filled with a variety of things just to fill in time until I can get some tomatoes planted when it's warm enough. But I've got Tuscan kale, I've got spinach that's going great, various beetroots, some red pak choi, mustard. I've also added in some flowers. I've got some hollyhock starting and some zinnias. There's also a volunteer chamomile coming up. So this garden is looking great at this point. We've even got a volunteer tomato that can't wait to get going. I think I might just leave that one there. Now all I'd like to take to the kitchen at this stage is some of this huge spinach. I like to have this sorted up with my eggs in the morning, so it's always handy to have it inside for those early morning starts. Alright, that's our spinach done. Just next to that bed, I have another bed that I've prepared for tomatoes, but I've just thrown some bean seeds in just to get something growing in the garden. I'll probably chop these down before they've produced pods, but in that way they'll leave the nitrogen in the soil to feed the tomatoes. And here's another little tomato volunteer. Just next to this future tomato bed, I've got my perennial bed, and I've got globe artichokes that I'm going to harvest today. Also, just checking this out, I'll have to harvest some of this comfrey soon. I like to get it before it goes to seed, so you can use the mulch anywhere and you're not going to create comfrey everywhere. I'll be harvesting the comfrey soon and using it to mulch some of my garden beds. I've got two varieties of artichokes. This one here is a purple variety, but I find that they're very spiky. When you're preparing them, you've got to be quite careful. Whereas this variety here, it doesn't seem to have the same spikes on the leaves, so it's a lot easier to handle. Also in this perennial bed, I've got various annual flowers. This one is chamomile that comes up by itself now in this area, and I do harvest these flowers for teas. The strawberries are just starting to ripen, but usually the race is on to beat the slugs to them. Hello, mister. He's come to see what he can pinch from the garden. No, got nothing for you, mate. I'm just going to grab a few of these artichokes today. I'll probably just have them steamed as a vegetable side dish. Just here I've got some snow peas. Now this trellis gets pretty blown around in the wind, and we've had a bit of that lately, so the snow pea plants are all over the place, but I'm still finding a few snow peas on it that I can harvest. One of the plants that is surviving the winds in my garden is my broad beans. I have tied it up, although it's pushing against the ties, and we'll see how much longer that lasts. But the beans are all forming. I like to eat the little seeds in the pods, and so I leave all the beans on there until they're fully developed. Now just up from my broad beans, I've got my borlotti bean bed. Now the plants are just coming along. Some have been eaten down by snails or slugs, but most of them seem to be going pretty well. What I would like to do today though is harvest a parsnip from this area if I can. Some of them look like they're going to be a good size, so I'm going to give that a go. I did remove lots of sorrel in this garden, but there's still plenty coming along. Now just in here, if you remember, these were volunteer parsnips that I've left in the ground. There's 4 or 5 of them really close together. Now I don't need that many, so I'm just going to see if I can dig this one out and leave the others to grow on a bit longer. Oh, there we go. It does have a few legs on it, but actually that's not a bad size parsnip for a volunteer. But I'll just fill that back in and leave those 2 to grow a bit longer. Just next to my borlotti beans bed is my onion bed. I've got pickling onions on this side, and I've also got some brown onions that are just starting to bulb up. I haven't grown onions successfully very many times, but it's pretty exciting to see the bulbs starting to form. Just along from the onions, I've got a second onion bed, which I planted much later than those. And I've also got a row of turnips as a fast crop, while the onions were just small. Some of the turnips have started to develop really well and are ready to harvest. I have been harvesting some of these turnips already, and I'm going to grab a few today. Some of them need to come out of the ground. I think this one's had too much water of late, so I'm going to grab these 3 and take them to the kitchen. That'll be okay if I just cut around that piece. Now, turnips are something that I'm just getting used to eating, and you can apparently use the turnip greens as well. I've got a book with various recipes for turnips on it, and I'm going to give some of those recipes a go because I've got lots of them growing in here. Just here is my former fennel patch. Well, it is still a fennel patch. I have left some to flower and go to seed, but I have discovered 2 bulbs that are still harvestable, so I'm going to grab those today. But I just thought I'd show you, I did get some zucchini planted, and there's a second one over there. Now I just put these tubes around them just to help protect them from slugs and snails a little bit, and it does seem to help. It helps create a microclimate in there too, which gets them growing a little bit faster, I find. I'm just going to dive in here and see if I can get some fennel bulbs that are still okay to enjoy. Well, that's the first one I spotted. It is starting to decay a bit on the outside. There's worms in there having a feast, and a couple of other little bugs, but that should clean up really well. Now to see if I can find that second one. Okay, same thing here. They really needed to be harvested the other day when I was out here doing it, but I'm just going to wash that off, and it's still fine underneath. Just next to my second onion bed and the turnips, I've got a whole row of peas. Now they're going to be a shelling pea. They're just mostly in flower at the moment, but they'll be forming pods soon, and those are really delicious little peas. I like to keep the peas in the freezer, so I grow a lot at this time of year, get them all shelled into the freezer, and they can last all year long. Now these garden beds here are my winter garden beds, which are really finishing up. Lots of things are going to seed. This sorrel plant has decided to go to seed, but I'm not going to let it flower and spread its seeds around this year. I've learnt my lesson. I've also got leeks going to seed, lots of lettuce going to seed, so I'll have to get a lot more of those planted. I've got Swiss chard going to seed. I've got the spinach going to seed. I like to save spinach seed because I can spread that around and get lots of spinach plants happening. And down the end there, I've got a huge cabbage that's just starting to form. Just here is my garlic bed. And some of them are good size and some of them are just tiny, but you sort of take what you get. Some of them are getting some rust on them, but it's getting close to harvest time, so I don't think that should have affected them. They do have garlic scapes, which I'll have to harvest, and I might do that actually now. Get rid of those, and it won't be long until I actually harvest these garlic. I want the conditions to dry off a little bit so that we don't bring up half the soil with it, but soon we'll be having beautiful fresh garlic. I'm just going to quickly go around and get these scapes before I forget. Now you can use garlic scapes in stir fries, or people make pesto. There's probably lots of different recipes online for those. Okay, just sneaking in past my beautiful kale flowers, I've got a cabbage which I think's ready for harvest. Now, I'm not sure what variety it is, but it's really firm and it's sort of more a conical shape than round. So I'm going to grab that and see what we've got. Okay. That looks pretty good. I do have various lettuces in the garden, but I have plenty in the fridge at the moment, so I'll leave these in the ground. Ooh. Just here, I've got my first cosmos flower of the season and just spotted my first nasturtium flower. I'm sure that's the first of many, and lots of little coriander flowers. I have had quite a few cauliflowers over winter and into spring, and I've still got some more coming. I did a second round of plantings. Most of them seem to be the green Macerata cauliflower, which is quite nice to eat. And this one here actually looks fairly purple. I'm going to harvest this one because I think it's probably getting past its best, but it'll be fine to make a soup with, and I might even grab some of the leaves which can go into the soup as well. And I might just add this one to my basket as well. A few more collies just coming along, and another one of those little purple cabbages too. Over the back there I've got some more parsnips, and that's just a few carrots that I'm going to let go to seed. Well, it won't be long until I get my summer crops into the ground, but as you can see, there's still plenty of food coming out of my garden in mid-spring. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll be sure to update you on the continuing build of my sweet potato bed. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.